In 13 countries of the world, atheism is a capital offense. You can be put to death for non-belief. We have literally helped dozens of atheists leave their homes and find safety, thereby escaping prison, mob violence, and even death.
We were chatting beforehand, I was checking with some friends, and one of the questions came up about comedy and the fact that we couldn't think of many, if any, comedians who were religious. I'm not asking for example, I'm just saying, do we think it's a thing that most stand-ups tend to be agnostic or atheist? Or
I think so. I think that's because a lot of comedians are critical thinkers. I think a lot of them are science-based.
They're intelligent.
Well, I don't want to. But then a lot of religious people are intelligent, but they've been got at an early age, and it's like, I think they're braver. Some people, there's still a thing of not saying I'm an atheist because people think that it's a bad thing to be.
I read that Ricky had an early ambition to be a scientist, and his attitude to science seems to me exactly right. Though, of course, he wouldn't claim to be a scientist. To quote him, "Science seeks the truth, and it does not discriminate. For better or worse, it finds things out. Science is humble. It knows what it knows, and it knows what it doesn't know. It bases its conclusions and beliefs on hard evidence, evidence that is constantly updated and upgraded. It doesn't get offended when new facts come along. It embraces the body of knowledge. It doesn't hold on to medieval practices because they are tradition." And the following seems to me to show an admirably scientific attitude to theology. The existence of God is not subjective. He either exists or he doesn't. It's not a matter of opinion. You can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. Ricky is immensely famous, of course, and he's very gracious about being stopped in the street and other aspects of fame. But being famous also prompted a typically witty remark on the subject of the widespread belief that only religious people are moral. Being famous is like believing in God. Someone's watching you all the time. I've never quite known how to cope with the retort that it's only extremists who get a religion a bad name. Ricky's answer to that at least hits one nail on the head. You can easily spot any religion of peace. Its extremist members would be extremely peaceful. Literary scholars have sometimes pointed out how fine can be the line between tragedy and comedy. Some of the greatest comedians and comic characters have been close to tragedy. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Tony Hancock, Falstaff, Basil Fawlty. Ricky Gervais is one of the world's great comedians, but unlike some comedians, he's not himself a tragic figure. He's a happy man with an endearing smile, a laughing court jester in a dark time. He uses humor to lift us all out of despond. Other comedians may do that in an escapist way, making us laugh as a way of running away from the dark reality of life. Ricky doesn't do that. On the contrary, he goes right to the heart of the darkness, tackles the evils of life and the evil people by confronting them head-on and laughing at them. As he himself said, "If you can't joke about the most horrendous things in the world, what's the point of jokes? What's the point in having humor? Humor is to get us over terrible things." Ladies and gentlemen, atheists and rationalists, I give you a great hero of our movement, our own wittily creative, infectiously laughing court jester, Ricky Gervais.
fantastic! I can take that back from you, actually, Ricky. I did.
Okay, you sit down, I think.
I'll sit down. That's it. Good night.
Now, Richard, did you
If
do
you'd
that?
have been all in black, that would have looked like
Yes.
a really amazing trick.
I thought you'd do that with the power of your mind. That was amazing. So we're going to chat about things, and I'm going to start off picking up on one of the topics you mentioned there, which is, I think for many people in the public, atheists have this sort of reputation for being a little bit down in the world and a little bit pessimistic. Are you, I mean, we're living in quite a difficult time at the moment. Are you optimistic people? Are you optimistic about the future?
Well, I don't know if I'm optimistic. I don't know. I'm happy. I've always been happy. I've always tried to get the most out of life. I worked out early on that was the shortcut I wanted. I just wanted to be happy. I did that first and then decided how I was going to sort of make a living. Am I optimistic? I mean, I've got nothing to fear. I look at this a bit like a holiday. We don't exist for 13.5 billion years. Then we exist for 80, 90, 100 years, if we're lucky. And you experience everything. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to be alive. The chances of us being here, as us, that sperm hitting that egg, is 400 trillion to 1. It's incredible that we're here, you know. And then we die, never to exist again, you know. And some people even get offended by me saying that. They say things like, you don't know that. No, I'll probably live again. You know. Someone said on Twitter once to me, why don't you pray just in case there's a God? And I said, why don't you put garlic over your door just in case there's a Dracula? But I've got no problem with praying. You know, it doesn't bother me. I've never been bothered by spirituality. I don't believe in it, but a personal belief has never been a danger.
Ricky Gervais understands what science is, a method that tests ideas, accepts evidence, and changes when it must. That simple approach has driven every real advance in human history. Knowledge grows by questioning, not by guarding tradition. On God, Gervais is blunt. Either one exists or not. Belief doesn't change facts. The same goes for morality. The Bible allows slavery, demands women's submission, and commands violence. These rules were enforced for centuries. Progress came only when people rejected them. When reason and human struggle built ideas of equality and rights. Gervais also challenges the claim that atheism is bleak. He calls life a rare accident, a chance against staggering odds, and finds joy in that truth. No promise of eternity is needed. What matters is the brief span we have and how we use it. And he does this with humor. He mocks cruelty, laughs at dogma, and turns comedy into defiance. That laughter is not denial. It is strength. So the issue is simple. Face reality as it is, or keep hiding behind stories that were written to keep us in line.
I suppose that's the nearest approach to a crocoduck, and that is real.
That is real.
But actually,
because it's only monotremes that it produces eggs and milk, it could make its own custard. But it... It doesn't, but it definitely could.
Well, it could. I use
Nice
the instant stuff, so it could use that as well. If you get a whisk, it would be fine.
Yes.
It is amazing. I mean, some Australian mammals. It's because, is it true that it floated away and there weren't predators as such? So,
There were predators, actually.
But they didn't...
They've mostly gone extinct. There was a giant predatory carnivorous kangaroo, for example, which must have been quite terrifying.
Oh, my God.
Bounding after you with its jaws agape.
Yeah. Oh, we should bring them back. Can we?
I think so. Yes.
Can we? You started it, but turned into an idiot on Twitter.
No.
Can we bring back the mammoth? You know? Can we?
Yeah.
We could.
I think you can, can't you?
Well, I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. No. Would that be the greatest thing ever?
It'd be amazing.
Can we bring back the mammoth?
There is a serious possibility. The genome of the mammoth is being pretty much worked out, and the technology to actually bring it back isn't there yet. But we've got the genome, and so it doesn't seem totally impossible that you could
Now, what does that mean? Do you mean you've synthesized something, or you've put together bits of DNA, or the DNA exists and you found it in the elephant and modified it? What does it mean? Do you mean you've got the thing that would make a mammoth if it was?
Well, because frozen mammoths died sufficiently recently, and they're frozen in the Arctic, so that there's plenty of tissue there. You can get plenty of DNA. There's a lovely Hilaire Belloc poem about the frozen mammoth, which ends up, I can't remember how it goes, but if the skin be, it will make an excellent soup, but the snag is, if the skin be but punctured before it is boiled, your confection is wholly and utterly spoiled. And hence, on account of the size of the beast, the dainty is nearly unknown. But anyway, there it is. It's
If you don't know the answer, Richard, just say so.
Right, you asked for this. Okay.
So how would we bring it back? What is the process? What would we do?
The process is that you use the soft tissues of this frozen mammoth to sequence the DNA, and that's pretty much been done, with a little bit of filling in with elephant DNA as well. Now, what we don't yet have the ability to do is to implant that DNA into an elephant egg, and then put the elephant egg with mammoth DNA into a female elephant, and then grow the embryo.
So it would be a hybrid at most.
No.
How could you? So you'd clone the mammoth and just use that as a surrogate.
You remember Dolly the sheep?
Yeah.
Well, it would be that kind of thing. So Dolly it was a sheep egg, and into that sheep egg was put the DNA of another sheep.
Right.
And then it was cloned.
If a mammoth baby come out, wouldn't that surprise the elephant?
No doubt. Yes, no doubt.
Like
a lot of people have hairy babies.
tusks and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, elephants have got tusks.
Oh, that's true, actually.
It's just hairier than the.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you could clone a mammoth, would you do it? Not clone. Would you?
I would, but there are many who wouldn't. There are many who think it would be unethical somehow to do this. They think it would be cruel.
Why would it be cruel? Because it wouldn't ever be in its natural habitat. It
Well,
wouldn't understand modern technology.
If it was just on its own, I mean, if you made lots of them, and some people think that we should actually clone lots of them and let them loose on the Siberian tundra to bring back the ecology that's disappeared.
I'd bring back Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'd let it loose in parts of England, to be honest, but.
Ricky, would you do it if you were part of the committee deciding whether to bring back a mammoth? How would you vote?
I don't know. Why would I? Would I be doing it just because I could? Because that's something to be said. He what?
Chinese scientist who cloned the twins with something like to protect them against HIV. How did that work out?
I don't know.
I didn't hear.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
I'm not certain of the answer. I was a lot more comfortable when we were talking about crocoducks, though. I'll give you that. So, okay, so we'll move on a bit. Away from mammoths and crocoducks. So atheism.
Yeah.
I can remember, and I don't know whether this has any resonance for you at all, but I can remember listening to you on the radio, and I can't place this. I know it's a long time ago, and I would think it's after the initial success of The Office, I think. And I think it's Steve Wright, but I might be wrong. And he said something like, you must wake up in the morning and say, thank God for my amazing things that are happening. And you said, why would I say thank God? I'm an atheist.
Right.
And it was the first time I'd heard the word atheist on kind of public radio.
Well, there shouldn't even be the word, should there? If people didn't invent gods, I wouldn't have to deny them. And it's just... but it's like... I was told when I sort of started breaking America to not mention I was an atheist.
Really?
Oh, 'cause first thing I did. On every first thing I did. Why? What am I going to lose? Imagine not doing something because people hate you because of what you are. That's you know, that's my only thing I've got. I'm a white, rich, middle-class man, but at least I'm hated for being an atheist. Do you know what I mean?
And, have you
I'm oppressed. I'm oppressed in 13 countries I'd never go to anyway.
Have you seen a change in your, over the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, about how atheism is perceived?
Well, I mean, you sort of do it. There's part of me that does it because I think I should, that there is someone being persecuted now that might, you know, I can't change the world, but what I mean, maybe someone in a Western world that thinks they shouldn't come out because it's a bad thing, because it's still a bad thing in Western society. In America, they took a vote, America, right? Probably that big bit in the middle of America, but we were voted least trustworthy group, joint bottom with rapists. So there's still a thing about, I better not say I'm an atheist, it'll annoy my mum or dad or granddad or school. There's still that. So you do that. Some of it I do it as an intellectual pursuit, because someone asks me a question, I'd rather give the right answer than the wrong answer. I'd rather tell the truth than lie, because it's easier, you know. I think the big thing, people think I run into churches and go, it's all fucking bollocks. I don't care, you know. But if I'm asked if I believe in God, I'll say no. I mean, you know, the tricky one is I did a film called The Invention of Lying, where I did a scene where thank you, 7 people saw that film, where my mother in that is dying, and it's because I'm the only person in the society who can lie. She says, I don't want to go to nothingness. And I go, there's not nothingness. It's a beautiful place you go and you're young again. And I invent heaven, right? And that comes from the fact that when my mum was dying, I did face a dilemma. If she'd have said, do you think there's a God? That's a personal thing, and that's you know. So I just try and be honest, really. And the other is, if someone else's kid, 5-year-old, asks me, do I believe in God? I sort of think, what should I say here? And I say, well, I don't, but a lot of people do. What do you think? You know, I try and there's still a level of diplomacy. It's not always my place. You know what I mean? I don't. But you know, my house, my rules. If someone asks me something on Twitter, I tell them the truth, because you know.
And Richard, in the last sort of 20, 30 years, have you seen a change in how atheism is perceived?
I'm not a sociologist. I haven't done the research. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not sure. It would only be a subjective impression. The statistics suggest that we're growing in numbers. Obviously in Western Europe, but also even in America, I think the number of people who claim no religion in the United States is now more than 20%, which is large compared to any particular religious denomination. So I think that the statistics show that the trend is in the right direction. But as Ricky says, other polls show that we're down there with rapists in terms of public.
I think they have to lump us in with, you know, agnostics, which
Richard Dawkins recalls Ricky Gervais on the radio. He was asked why he doesn't thank God for his success. Gervais replied simply, he doesn't believe. The word atheist exists because humans invented gods. Denying gods has always carried risk. Socrates was executed for impiety. Giordano Bruno burned for heresy. Apostates in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Pakistan face imprisonment or death. Throughout history, disbelief has been treated as a threat to social and political order. Religious authority demanded obedience. Questioning it could cost life, liberty, or reputation. Atheists face suspicion even in modern societies. Early 2000s U.S. polls ranked atheists as the least trusted group, tied with rapists. Studies in Canada show non-religious candidates encounter barriers in elections. Secular populations rise steadily in Europe. In the United States, over 20% identify as knowns. Sweden and the Netherlands, largely non-religious, lead global indices for education, equality, and well-being. Evidence, reason, and inquiry shape functional societies. Societies that reward critical thinking are more resilient, more equal, and capable of sustaining human rights. Religion did not build these societies. Human effort, courage, and skepticism did. Gervais stresses honesty as a moral principle. In his film, The Invention of Lying, he explores a society without falsehoods, showing that ethical life depends on truth. When faced with the fear of death, human imagination invents comforting stories. Gervais illustrates that myths are convenient, not necessary. He highlights the odds of any individual existing. 400 trillion to 1. Life is rare, brief, and astonishing. That reality does not require supernatural reassurance. It demands integrity, curiosity, and courage. Living fully means confronting reality without illusions, accepting death, and acting ethically because we understand consequences, not because a deity commands it. Dawkins notes that disbelief continues to grow. Skepticism spreads through dialogue, evidence, and observation. Gervais has faced criticism, hostility, and mistrust for stating his disbelief, including online attacks and social disapproval. Many still hide their lack of belief out of fear of ostracism. That fear is a legacy of centuries of religious authority. Despite that, more people now speak openly, examine claims, and reject inherited dogma. They engage in moral reasoning independently of supernatural authority. Gervais and Dawkins force a question society rarely asks. If stating disbelief provokes fear, what does that reveal about the authority religion claims? If morality, meaning, and wonder exist without gods, why defend myths that historically constrained thought, punished dissent, and enforced obedience? Human honesty, inquiry, and courage have always expanded freedom. They remain the clearest guide forward. The challenge is personal and collective. It is not enough to live silently. Truth must be acknowledged. Human progress has always demanded courage, and that courage begins by questioning myths, facing the extraordinary odds of existence, and living with integrity. Belief cannot claim moral authority where honesty and reason prove stronger, richer, and more durable.
But then, you know, a lot of religious people are intelligent, but they've been got at an early age, and it's like, I think they're braver. Some people, there's still a thing of not saying I'm an atheist because people think that it's a bad thing to be. You know, parents still christen their kids instead of school because they think it's a respectable thing to do. You know, that's sad, but I get it. There's a couple though. There's a couple. They don't put it in their act, I don't think. Tim Vine is very devout Christian.
Yes, true. Yes. But in general, they tend to be, I think, more skeptical or...
I think that's because they look at things from all angles and they come up with funny ideas. And I look at the idea, and I think that's what's wrong, and that's what dogma does, is that people try and give ideas human rights, so you leave them alone. And you don't have to. You can ridicule ideas without hurting anyone. And some people say...
That deserves a round of applause.
Oh, thank you. And they found it shuts some people up. If they say that's hurt, you know, you can be accused of racism or anything if you criticize an idea, and it's people jumping in the way of a bullet and saying, "Why are you shooting at me?" And it comes back to Richard's point that I'm offended. That's not an argument. It's not an argument. It's like me being offended if someone takes the mickey out of maths. It's like, go on, yeah, fine, yeah. Do you know what I mean? You can laugh at maths. It doesn't affect maths. It doesn't affect maths.
And I'd like asking this of all performers. When you've done a lot of live work, when you go on stage or before you go on stage, do you have any superstitious rituals that you carry out?
No.
Really?
No, I'm not superstitious, am I? Is this a trick?
No.
If I said yes, I'd go down a vault.
Then look at this footage and deny it. No, no, really.
No, I have. I probably have loads of sort of neuroses and OCDs and things like that, but nothing based on superstition. It's worrying that are the audience in? What's the air conditioning like? Is it like is there a squeaky door? It was no ice in the drink. Someone's putting off. There's someone. Okay. I have all those things, but I have no superstitions. No. Did you mean superstitions, or do you mean?
Yeah, I mean some performers touch wood or wear certain socks or nothing.
Well, I wear the same clothes because I can't be bothered to think about what else to wear, but. No, I don't do touch wood.
Okay.
No, I don't touch wood. No.
I'd ask.
No, I don't. No. I burn some incense, say a couple of prayers. That's it, really.
And in terms of changing minds, in terms of getting people to be more skeptical or rational or scientific, both of you enormously influential, but with two different ways. Obviously, you're using comedy a lot of the time, and you're depending more on factual arguments. How does that play out? Is that playing to the same audiences? Do you think it's equally persuasive?
Well, I think Rich is more driven in his thing than I am. But what do you think about changing minds? What do you think?
I'm known to be not very good at it. I tend to just, as you were saying earlier, Ricky, I tend to just tell the truth. And that isn't always the right way to go about it. Marketing wouldn't approve, I suspect, of just simply going out and telling the truth. I had a rather nice encounter with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said something like, you just put it out there. You don't, there's no act of persuasion, there's no act of seduction going on. You just simply say, here are the facts, take it or leave it. And I had to say, I said, I gratefully accept the rebuke, but I then went on to say, I'm not the worst of that. And I quoted Alan Anderson, who was then the editor of New Scientist, who said, I asked him what your policy is at New Scientist, and he said, our policy at New Scientist is science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can fuck off.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly, yeah. Yeah, in the greater scheme of things, there are probably worse things than people believing in all the different gods. It doesn't affect me because I'm free and liberated and safe, and but yeah, you can still be annoyed. It's ignorance that annoys me more than anything. Whatever it is, it's not. I don't want to keep going after religion because that's only one form of this belligerent, willful, and it's not even that. It's you can't sort of help what you believe in. Most people aren't going around thinking this will annoy people or I'm trying to oppress people's rights. They just think I believe in God because that's how my brain worked when I was little, and now I think there's probably a God. And most religious people aren't crazy. It's something else. Again, it's something, we worry about the people who believe the bad bits in their holy book as well as the good bits. Most nice people who believe in God, they can tell the difference. They know the nice bits, they cherry pick and they know the nice bits from the bad bits. They don't do the bad bits. And my point is, if you know the bad bits from the good bits, you don't need the holy book. You're already a moral person.
And with Afterlife, which I think is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Clearly, obviously you talk about atheism in there, but it's fundamentally about kindness and living a good life, I think.
I think it is. I think the question is, when you lose the best thing about life, is it still worth living? That's what the question starts with. It started with a high concept, really. Imagine you lost everything. You wouldn't care about anything. You could do what you wanted. So that was the comedic, dramatic.
Where did that thought come from?
I don't know. I think it might have been sort of 2 years of this thing that you got to watch what you say. Like it wasn't to say the right thing, it was to say the thing that was least offensive to most people, which is nonsense. We'd still be in the Middle Ages. We'd still be putting leeches down our pants. You know, every scientist committed heresy at some point. Every great invention, every move forward in progress was going against some sort of crazy dogma at some point. And it wasn't that there was more crazy, mad, nasty people around. It was that they weren't ashamed of it anymore in the last few years. You know, in my day, racists were ashamed, right? Now they're not. Right? So, and the backlash was people saying, "Oh, you can't say anything," and I just thought, well, imagine if you could. You just could. You didn't care about the consequences. You didn't care about offending anyone, because that we do. We even myself and Richard, who want to tell the truth, we do things we don't want to do all the time, because we're worried about it. If we're mugged, we hand over the cash because we don't want to get hurt, right? But imagine if you didn't care about living or dying. That happens in afterlife. You think, bring it on. I'm not scared anymore. So that was the idea. If you weren't scared about consequences, if you weren't scared about politeness, if you had nothing to lose, and that was the seed of the idea, really.
But then, of course, it becomes about kindness. It becomes about overcoming
it becomes about
that
people
feeling.
trying to save you, the comfort of strangers and the people who care, and that's the thing about grieving and depression. The thing that came out of Afterlife that shocked me. I've never had a reaction like it. Even The Office, I've never had a reaction like it, because it was an emotional reaction. And I found out that people come up to me all the time and they say, "Oh, I lost my mother, I lost my husband." And you think, oh yeah, of course, everyone's grieving. Everyone's grieving this year about something. And the older they get, the more that happens. And that was never an intention, but I think people hadn't seen, certainly a comedy, but they hadn't seen something that dealt with grief. That man who he wanted to die, and then I had to make it funny. So, but yeah.
But also this character is dealing with grief not from a religious point of view at all.
Well, I wanted that. I wanted a bit of a play on words with afterlife, like he thought his life was over.
Ricky Gervais points out that intelligence doesn't automatically lead to belief. Many religious people are taught faith from childhood. Baptism, prayers, and religious instruction are presented as normal, even essential. Declaring disbelief can provoke tension, disapproval, or social isolation. Gervais notes that identifying as atheist requires courage because it challenges long-standing expectations and traditions. He emphasizes skepticism as a way to examine the world. Humor and critical thinking allow people to question ideas without harming others. Dogma treats beliefs as untouchable, discouraging investigation. Criticism is not personal attack. It's a way to test ideas. Richard Dawkins echoes this. Facts exist independently of feelings or offense. Understanding requires evidence, not comfort. Gervais also rejects superstition. Performers may have routines, anxieties, or habits, but he avoids rituals or charms. Outcomes depend on preparation, skill, and observation, not invisible forces. Belief in supernatural influence is unnecessary for navigating life. Both speakers address society's perception of atheism. Dawkins cites surveys that rank atheists as untrustworthy. Gervais notes that many conceal disbelief to avoid criticism. Historically, religious authorities equated morality with faith, yet secular reasoning shows ethics do not require belief in a deity. Humans make moral choices, show compassion, and respond to grief without scripture. Gervais' work in Afterlife and The Office reflects this. Characters confront grief, loss, and mortality without invoking God. Humor and observation allow audiences to engage honestly with life's difficulties. Moral action emerges from empathy, reflection, and human connection. Dogma often restricts thought and discourages questioning. Life gains meaning through conscious action, ethical reflection, and awareness of consequences. Honesty, curiosity, and courage guide individuals in facing reality, making moral decisions, and navigating loss. Belief is not a prerequisite for morality or for living a full life. How do you see it? Do you think religion shapes morality, or can we develop ethics and compassion on our own? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If this got you ideas, be sure to like, subscribe, and share to keep the conversation going.
Do you speak ancient Arabic, by the way?
I could read and do a bit of grammar.
A bit of grammar. You don't speak it then?
No, no.
So your presumption that it's beautiful ancient Arabic is just a presumption. You actually don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I'll respond.
Okay. I just wanted to ask that question because I don't speak Turkish. I wanted to see if you spoke ancient Arabic. Well, I just want to ask, do you speak ancient Arabic?
Yes, I do.
Fluently?
No, but I do speak it.
Okay, but not fluently.
كيف حال?
Because we didn't evolve to know about it. We've learned about it. We force our idea of common sense to change. It's called learning. Some people would rather read an ancient book than learn. And this has been a very good evidence of that. You are rather gorgeous. Gorgeous George over here. I watched some of these and they're always exactly the same. So I thought they'd be different this time. And it always begins with you and I'm supposed to respond to you. And I will to some extent, but it's hard to respond to nonsense. And in fact, the point of this is not a question, does God exist? That's not the question. It's atheism or Islam or atheism, which is more sensible, I think is what it says, or something like that. Now, I was just shocked because I thought that you wouldn't bother to try and pretend you knew science, because you don't, and we're going to go through that in real detail. Everything you said is nonsense when it comes to science, so we'll go through and we'll have a little chat if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay, good. And so I found it remarkable that you began with that kind of nonsense, and we'll continue from that. But let me just first begin with the fact that the premise of this debate is in some sense inappropriate, because it suggests two things. First of all, it suggests that Islam is something special, and it isn't. It's not special at all. It's one of 1,000 religions or more that have existed since the dawn of humanity, all of which claim divine revelation, all of which claim perfection, all of which proclaim infinite knowledge, uniqueness, beauty, etc. So Islam is just a religion like any other religion. And there's no difference. It proclaims, just as the Rig Veda did and Akhenaten in ancient Egypt, that the universe had a beginning, nothing special, okay? There's absolutely nothing special. The question is, Islam as one of 1,000 religions, all of which make the same claims, but mutually inconsistent ones. So one of the things we know is, of these 1,000 religions, they all make mutually inconsistent claims, so they can't all be correct. In fact, at best, one of them can be correct, because they're not consistent with each other. So that means a priori, just a priori, and I know like that, you like that term instead of a posteriori. I've heard you say that. A priori, Islam has a probability of 0.1% of being correct, because it's just one of 1,000 religions, and one of them at most is correct. But since they all make the same claims, it's probable that none of them are correct. So treating Islam specially is inappropriate. Then atheism is somehow, as has been described, speaker, a belief system. It's not a belief system like Islam or Judaism or Christianity or the Norse myths or Zeus or Thor or any of the other myths that have been created throughout human history. All it's saying is, it's not a belief system. It's saying, you know what? We don't choose to believe that stuff because it's not sensible. So it's not saying we believe X. It's saying, well, this myth is inconsistent with this myth, or this myth is inconsistent with what we know about the universe, and therefore, it's unlikely to be true. So what atheism is just saying, this is unlikely to be true. It's not a belief system. So to compare one versus the other is, of course, false. It's a false premise. The first part of the false premise is that Islam is special. Not special at all. It's been there. It'll be gone, or be there as long as other religions. It's just like all the rest. And atheism is not a religion. It's just, in fact, what it is could be described as common sense. Okay? What makes sense, I will think that those things that make sense are likely, and those things that don't make sense are unlikely. In fact, that's what science is all about. Okay, so having said that there's nothing special about Islam, and there certainly isn't. I'm going to talk a little bit about, my intent, by the way, is, the other thing I should say is, debates, I'm an educator. It's, a flaw, but it is what it is. That means I believe in actually trying to illuminate ideas and lead to discussion, critical thinking, and eventually learning things and increase in knowledge. Debates aren't meant for that. Debates are rhetorical devices for people to go out and perform, make statements, and then challenge others and try and convince an audience of something. That's not education. So I will talk a little bit about some of this, and then I just want to have a chat. I'm going to use my 25 minutes to have a little chat. I'll take up my time when I could pontificate, as we've heard, and just ask some questions, because I'd actually like to learn some things, okay? And hopefully in the process there'll be some education for both of us.
Nearly every culture has made the same claims of revelation and cosmic truth. Ancient Egypt's Book of the Dead described creation from chaos. Hindu scriptures talked about multiple universes long before Islam, and Greek philosophers like Democritus suggested an infinite cosmos. The Quran, far from being unique, repeats older myths. For example, Surah 1886 says the sun sets into a muddy spring, an ancient flat earth belief. Surah 86 verse 6 claims humans were created from a fluid gushing forth from between the backbone and the ribs, which contradicts modern biology and reproductive science. Even the claim of scientific miracles in the Quran falls apart. Muslim apologists often point to Surah 21:30, saying it predicts the Big Bang. But the verse simply says the heavens and earth were once joined, then separated, a common creation myth, not science. Compare that to real evidence. The cosmic microwave background radiation discovered in 1965, which actually confirms the Big Bang, a discovery from physics, not scripture. And Islam's specialness today often reveals itself through control, not truth. In countries like Saudi Arabia, apostasy and blasphemy are punishable by death. In 2020, a Pakistani professor was sentenced to death for allegedly insulting Muhammad.
As I've often said, common sense, our deductions might suggest that you cannot be in two places at once. That is crazy. But of course, an electron not only can be, but it is. It doesn't make sense because we didn't evolve to know about it. We've learned about it. We force our idea of common sense to change. It's called learning. Some people would rather read an ancient book than learn. And this has been a very good evidence of that. For example, to say something is inconceivable just means you can't conceive it. But the great thing about the universe, and the reason that I do science, is that the universe has a much greater imagination than we do. In fact, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And that's what's wonderful about the universe. Things that are inconceivable happen all the time. And what that does is that expands our mind. And expanding our minds to conform to the evidence of reality is common sense. And that's what, when you call atheism, that's what that is. That's just saying, I'm going to accept the evidence of reality, and if something seems like it contradicts the evidence of reality or is irrational, I should question it. Now, there are a lot of ideas which gorgeous George over here, no, Mr. Sorhish. Zordzis. I've been to Istanbul and I'm trying to learn Turkish, but Zordzis. Mr. Zordzis. It's okay. Do you speak ancient Arabic, by the way?
I could read and do a bit of grammar.
A bit of grammar. You don't speak it then?
No.
So your presumption that it's beautiful ancient Arabic is just a presumption. You actually don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I'll respond.
Okay. I just wanted to ask that question because I don't speak Turkish. I wanted to see if you spoke ancient Arabic. Well, I just want to ask, do you speak ancient Arabic?
Yes, I do.
Fluently?
No, but I do speak it.
Okay, but not fluently.
كيف حال?
Well, you know what? There's a real language that you don't speak. It's called the language of mathematics. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about this nonsense about infinity. Let's take something physical. Let's draw a circle and draw a diameter. What's the ratio of the distance of the circle to the diameter? Do you know?
You're the teacher.
Do you know?
You're the teacher.
I know, I'm asking you a question. I want to have a chat.
I don't know anything.
Well, you've demonstrated that, but you ever heard of pi?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Oh, do you know what it is?
3.14, Christine, you said.
How many decimals does it have?
I don't remember.
An infinite number.
Yes.
Okay, so the physical distance of the ratio of a diameter of a circle to its circumference is an infinite number.
Yes.
What do you know? Now, when we talk about, what's amazing to me is you quoted Aristotle as the basis of science. Of course, Aristotle was the one that told us objects fall in proportion to their weight, because he actually didn't do the experiment. He deduced it based on what he wanted. Galileo, of course, did the experiment, right? And we know, let's do the experiment here in front of you. So I'm going to take this object and this object.
Yes.
Aristotle would tell me which would fall first. Will you tell me which would fall first? Guess,
Okay.
if you don't know.
The book.
Okay, look, you were right. Great. Okay, good. Why?
Because there's resistance
Resistance to what?
to the paper, right?
Okay, exactly. Aristotle didn't know that.
Yes, he didn't.
Okay. Aristotle also claimed that infinity was impossible because indeed, as you pointed out, the distance from you to me could be divided into a half, and then a quarter, and then an eighth, and then a 16th, and that's an infinite thing. It makes it impossible.
Yes.
Well, the thing that Aristotle didn't know how to do, and you don't know how to do, is to sum an infinite series. 1 plus a half plus a quarter plus an eighth plus a 16th adds up to 2.
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of argument that infinity is impossible, it just doesn't make sense mathematically. Infinities do occur. Now, it is true in my book that I said infinite density or infinite energy is a concept that appears to be in contradiction with the evidence of physics. But that doesn't apply. All infinities are impossible. In fact, space could be infinitely large. There's no presumption that space isn't infinitely large. It could be. What we now know about physics suggests it probably isn't, but there's no law of physics that says space can't be infinitely large. So this notion that you deduce that infinity is impossible because you don't like it is just not the way the world works. Because infinities happen all the time, whether you like them or not. Not only that, it doesn't lead to irrational actions. Mathematicians have a way of dealing with infinity. Yes. We can add infinities. We can take numbers and an infinite series that, for example, the series 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 to infinity actually has, in mathematical terms, can have a finite sum. It's minus 1/12, if you wanted to know. Okay? It may not seem logical to you. It may seem inconceivable to you that the sum of a series of positive terms, each of which is bigger than 1/12, could end up being minus 1/12. But the fact that it's inconceivable to you just means you're ignorant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Krauss is right that the universe doesn't bend to our common sense. Quantum mechanics shows particles exist in multiple states at once, something religion never predicted, but science has proven again and again. Islam, by contrast, depends on outdated, common-sense claims written in the 7th century. The Quran in Surah 86, 6-7 says humans are created from a fluid that comes from between the backbone and ribs, a belief rooted in primitive anatomy, not biology. Meanwhile, science has mapped DNA, showing life comes from genetic code, not vague, gushing fluid. Krauss's point on infinity also matters. Mathematically, infinity isn't nonsense. It's foundational. Pi is infinite, and calculus uses infinite series to describe motion and gravity. Yet Islamic scholars like Al-Ghazali argued infinity is impossible, trying to defend the idea of a finite, created universe. Modern cosmology shows otherwise. Space itself may be infinite, and even if it isn't, there's no physical law preventing it. That's why Hawking's models, inflation theory, and quantum cosmology all describe possible infinite structures, far beyond what Scripture imagined. Religious texts resisted these discoveries. Aristotle said heavier objects fall faster. The Quran says mountains were placed to keep earth from shaking, Surah 16:15. But Galileo proved weight doesn't matter, and plate tectonics shows mountains are products of earthquakes, not their cure. Every time, science corrected what common sense or Scripture got wrong. That's the difference. Atheism adjusts to evidence while Islam clings to error.
Now, this idea that Occam's razor suggests, first of all, Occam's razor is not a principle of science. Okay, it's a nice idea that you should try for the simplest answer to any question, and physicists try and use that. Sometimes the simplest answer doesn't work. In genomics, for example, it'd be nice if every gene, in fact, you talked about more than one cause for an effect. It'd be nice if every gene, every disease was caused by a single gene. One of the reasons that genomics is so difficult is we've discovered there's a complex interaction of genes, so that in fact, that there are many separate causes of most diseases. There are very few diseases that have a single cause. But in fact, you know what is simpler than the number 1? The number 0. 0 is a much simpler reason that there's no cause. Okay, so if you really wanted to apply Occam's razor, in fact, you'd apply no causes. Now, you also use the term causality, which is a term I understand. You didn't define it. Do you want to define it?
I may do.
Well, why don't you do it now?
I don't want to give you that favor.
Oh, I thought we were going to have a chat.
Yeah, but I want to have a chat, not a chat. So it's less rhetoric, more connection.
No, let's have a chat. No, I think when we talk about rhetoric, we were talking about the lecture you just gave. I want to have a chat. I'm asking you a question. Do you know what causality means? You use the term.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
if you use a term, you should know what it means.
yes.
Okay,
I have my
you use it.
definition. I have my definition.
Okay. Well, I'll define, and that's cause precedes effects. Does that sound good?
No, that's the wrong definition. In my
Okay.
opinion.
Well, I'd like to learn what it is.
Well, for example, there's an interesting book about the quantum physics and causality, and the philosophers and philosophers of science and scientists have disagreed on a specific definition. So they've reduced back to a fundamental definition. Do you want to have a chat a chat?
You quoted a book on physics.
Yeah, I haven't finished yet.
Physicists don't disagree about the definition of causality.
Have you presumed your results here? Do you really want to connect with me as a human being?
No. But
you've asked me a question, you're answering it for me? I mean, come on.
You quoted physicists. Go on.
I said scientists.
Okay.
Now, which is the same, I agree. Now, so from my limited knowledge, and I do believe it is limited, of course, is that the agreement has been on something which produces an effect, which includes, therefore, you can have something called asymmetric spontaneous causality, where the cause exists prior causally, but not prior temporally. So there is a whole range.
What's prior causally, not prior temporally?
Prior causally means that there is I'll give you an example. The Kantian example was you have an infinite ball that's on an infinite pillow. Now, they both, time doesn't exist here, but you're not going to say the indentation is not as a result of the ball. So there is a causal dependency there, and time is out of the window. So we could discuss causality until the cows come home, but it's not as simple as what you're trying to say in terms of that. It doesn't presume temporality, do you see?
Well, I think it does. I think, again, if you think carefully about what you just did, the ball doesn't create an indent in a pillow. And by the way, you used infinite. I thought we weren't allowed infinite. But anyway.
It was an example.
Yeah, well, it's an example of a physical example, which you said doesn't exist if it's infinite. But it doesn't matter if it's infinite. A pillow here, a finite pillow and a finite ball.
Yes.
Okay? There's an indent.
Of course there is, yeah.
Okay, was the ball there or not?
Well, my example wasn't based on finitude. It was based on they're both infinite.
Well, but if the ball isn't on the pillow, it doesn't create an indent, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, so it had to be, so was it put on the pillow or not?
Well, that's irrelevant. You're damning the example. That's a logical fallacy.
No.
Get the point I'm trying to say.
The point is that the physical causes have physical effects. So either the ball is on the pillow or not. Now, the point about causality is that the interesting aspect of it is that's an interesting physical question. But what if there's no before? Let's take, you talked about the cosmology. So let's take general relativity, whose equations I'm sure you don't know. And
I said I don't know anything.
The beginning, you made it very clear that the beginning of the universe is very important. You deduced it, but in fact, deduction doesn't matter. The point is, the universe, our visible universe, did have a beginning because we can measure it. Whether we liked it or not, or whether we think it's sensible or not, it actually did have a beginning, a factor not in dispute. Our universe had a beginning. Now, however, the laws of physics tell us, right now, if we extrapolate back to the beginning, that if we took it at face value, that time didn't exist before t equals 0. So if time doesn't exist at all, the sense of cause doesn't even make sense. And this is the key point. In science, we have to realize that our common sense notions sometimes go out the window. When we observe effects, they have causes. But at the beginning of time, when time itself may have come into existence, then that question becomes a bad question. Philosophers can debate it, people can write it down, but it doesn't matter. Now, the other thing I will say is you've somehow talked to me about the fact that the Quran as a literary document is different than other literary documents. And you've given some arguments that I understand. What I actually did this the other day because I've seen you give this talk a gazillion times. I actually input in a computer a lot of Arabic words and asked them to produce it at random. And I produced 2 sentences from the Arabic from the Quran in 11.6 seconds. My computer speaks neither Arabic nor is Arab, but produced that those incredibly divine words. Now, the other question, of course, I would have is, and this is a common sense question, is why did God choose Arabic, or Aramaic, or Greek? I mean, doesn't he speak English? Or the Americans always think he does, which is why they invented the Mormon religion. So the question I want to ask is, what makes sense is to ask not the details of the Quran, which I don't want to dwell on, because it's just one of 1,000 different religions, all of which make the same claims, and all of which, if you look at them a priori, are equally ridiculous from an a priori common sense notion. For example, and I got this from my late friend Christopher Hitchens, is it sensible to assume that humans evolved in their present form somewhere between 250,000 to 1 million years ago? So you have a God who creates a universe and has 4.5 billion years of life evolving, and then Homo sapiens evolve and live in incredibly awful conditions and for 250,000 years, and suddenly, in the middle of the desert, in a cave where no one can see it, he takes some poor schmo and says, I'm going to tell you the truth. And not only that, I'm going to allow you to save humanity. And in fact, if people don't believe you, they're going to go to hell for eternity, and we can talk in great length, in great sadomasochistic length about the torture they're going to have, and we can all enjoy it. Now, what about all those poor 250,000 years of people, of real people who were struggling to exist and survive, those poor people who were existing before that God decided to give his revelation to Muhammad? Why that? Why would a sensible God wait that long? And of course, the interesting question you have to ask is, why are the revelations always done when no one can see them? If you're asking a court of law, you'd say, well, you know what? It just doesn't make sense. Why don't once it doesn't call down from the sky so everyone can hear them? Why is it always given to people in private who then claim they've had a revelation? Now, why should I believe Muhammad's revelations any more than anyone else's? In fact,
Krauss makes a strong point. When we talk about causes and the universe, science shows us that our common sense ideas often collapse. In physics, time itself began at the Big Bang. If time didn't exist before, then asking what caused it is a meaningless question. This destroys the Islamic claim that everything must have a cause, and therefore God must exist. The Quran in Surah 21:30 says the heavens and earth were once joined, but that's a vague myth, not science. It doesn't explain cosmic background radiation, inflation, or quantum fluctuations. Real evidence that shows how the universe expanded without divine intervention. And the claim that the Quran is uniquely divine, easily tested. Krauss showed a computer can generate Quran-like verses in seconds. That undercuts Surah 2:23, which challenges doubters to produce a chapter like it. Machines can do it today, proving it's not beyond human or natural capability. Even the language argument collapses. If God wanted truth for all humanity, why limit it to 7th century Arabic, a language only a fraction of the world could understand? That's not universal truth, that's local tribalism. Krauss also echoes Hitchens. Why would a God wait 250,000 years after humans evolved before revealing himself in a cave, in private, to one man? What about the billions of people who lived and died before Islam existed? Surah 385 says, "Anyone who seeks a religion other than Islam will never be accepted." That condemns every human being before Muhammad to hell, an idea that's cruel, not divine. And why are revelations always hidden? Moses on Sinai, Jesus in the desert, Muhammad in a cave. Always secret, never open to the world. If truth mattered, God could reveal himself in every language, in every age, to everyone at once. Instead, what we see is mythology repeating itself, tailored to local cultures, then enforced with threats of eternal torture. So here's the question. If God truly wanted all of humanity to know the truth, why would he reveal it in secret visions to a handful of men, in languages most of the world can't understand, and only thousands of years into human history? Doesn't that sound more like myth than reality? If you found this breakdown helpful, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Islam's foundation holds up under science and history? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more fact-based analysis, and share it with someone who still thinks ancient books explain the universe better than science does.